Hi everyone. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to hem a garment using the Hong Kong finish. Okay, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. For this one method, we're going to use two pieces of fabric. Okay, so here's the right side, the fashion fabric, the side that everybody would see if you're wearing the garment, and then here's the inside. Okay, and this would be like a lining or underlining or something like that. And then I have a bias strip as well. This is the right side of it with the markings, and this is the wrong side. Okay. If you need to know how to cut bias, find bias, and cut bias strips, you can. There's a link in the description below, and you can find it there. Okay. Okay. So this method that we're going to do is a great way if you want to combine, say, your fashion fabric and you had it lined. All in the same hem. Now, typically, I always think it's better to, depending on what you're doing, but I feel like most of the time it's better to let your fashion fabric and your lining kind of hang free, to hem them separately and let them hang free. I find when you hem them together, sometimes they can pull on each other and make the hem of, the dress or skirt or whatever you're wearing, or creating kind of pull in odd ways. So a lot of times I find hemming them separately and letting them hang separately is always best. But you may not always want to do that, or there may be a reason not to do that. So this is a way you can kind of combine the two and have a nice clean finish. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to turn this back around and we're going to Hong Kong the edge of this garment. Okay. I've stay stitched these two pieces of fabric in place just so they don't move up top. Okay. So we're going to take our bias strip and we're going to put right sides together. So the right side of your bias strip you're going to put against the right side of your garment like so, lining up the cut edges. And we're going to sew this on at 1/4 inch. Okay, so let's go to the sewing machine and do that. Okay, we're here at the machine. And again, we're going to sew the right side of this bias strip to the right side of the fabric. And we're sewing it on at 1/4 inch. All right, this is permanent, so we're going to back tack at the beginning and end. Here we go. All right. So there it is, sewn on at 1/4 inch. Let's go back to the ironing board. Okay, so here it is sewn on, and I can just eliminate this extra. We don't need that. All right, so now what we want to do is press this bias strip down towards our seam allowance. All right, so here's all our seam allowance, so we're going to press it down towards the bottom of the garment, and we'll give that a nice quick press, nice and flat. There we go. All right, now we're going to flip this over, and now what we want to do is press the bias strip back to the back side of this garment. Okay, when we do this, we're going to press it so it's nice and tight right up against this crease right here, or against this cut edge right here. All right, just like so. We don't want to pull it too tight because we don't want to bunch this up. That will create issues and roping at the bias strip here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and fold that up very carefully, and we'll just press it right up. Like so. Alright, so now that's been pressed up, you can see what it looks like. That's the inside of it. And I'll flip it right over. And that's what it looks like in the front. Okay, so now we want to go back to the machine, and when you want to stitch right in the ditch. What the ditch is what this seam is right here, where the garment and the bias are sewn together. We're going to try and stitch right in that seam. Okay, if that seems too hard, you can go ahead and stitch right on the edge of the bias, at 1/16 of an inch as well. Okay, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and attempt to stitch in the ditch. Here we go. Okay, here we are, back at the machine. I'm going to stitch right in this ditch. So again, that seam that the bias and the garment are making, now that they're sewn together. And this is permanent. So back tack beginning and end. There we are. This always looks a lot better if you use thread that matches your fabric. Okay. So what this does is it catches this bias right here on this side. Okay. So let's go ahead back to the cutting table and trim this back. All right, we're back at the cutting table. So we've stitched in our ditch. All right. And now we have all this extra bias we don't need. Let's go ahead and trim this back to about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4. Go. Now obviously when you trim that back, you want to try and make it look a little nicer. It's a little choppy. Anyways, all right. And now we're ready to turn up the rest of our hem. Okay. What I'm going to do so I get a nice clean turn, I'm going to go ahead and do a row of stitching. I'm actually going to do a very long stitch. I'm going to change my stitch length to like a gathering stitch, or what some people call a basting stitch. And that way I'll have a nice row of stitching that I can just press this up again. Okay, so let's go to the machine and do a quick row of stitching right there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this. I'm going to stitch it at, it depends on what you'd want to do is stitch it whatever your hem length is. I'm going to do about 1 inch from my edge right here. I'll turn back about 1 inch, maybe a little bit more. And here we go. And you don't want to back tack on that because we're going to pull that thread out as soon as we finish pressing it back. Okay, let's go back to the ironing board. All right, I've given myself a nice row of stitching here that I can press this up, which will give me a nice, clean, accurate hem. Press back. Press that back like so. All right, so now I have a nice even hem. So that's the wrong side. Here's the right side. I can pull out this basting stitch I put in. All right, there it is. Now we're ready and we can finish this hem, okay? We still need to tack it up. If you wanted, you could go back and stitch right along this edge again through all layers, and that would hold it up, but you'd have a row stitching on the outside. Okay, we're going to do some hand stitching here. In fact, we're going to do a blanket stitch. Okay, so let me grab a needle and thread and we'll do that. Okay, I have my hand needle and thread. I've doubled my thread. Okay, for the hem, you can just do one strand of thread if you want. I like to double it, just it makes the hem more durable. And I've put a knot on one edge. Okay, we're going to do a blanket stitch here. There's many different stitches we could do here. I like the blanket stitch for him because it kind of locks around itself. So if the thread ever did break and start coming undone, it kind of, because it locks itself in with every stitch, it will come undone very slowly and you'll hopefully catch it before the hem comes all the way undone. All right, so let's start here at this top edge and we're going to go right inside, and I'm just going to lock in my thread here. I'm just going to catch that piece of bias right there, go through once and then go through that same place again just to create a loop, go through my loop and pull, and I'm just kind of locking in my thread. Okay, let's close that back up now. And I like to do that in the back because it hides this knot. And there we go. Okay, Alright, so the way this stitch works is you want to pull the thread over to the opposite hand that has your needle. So I've pulled the thread over here like so. And because we have a lining here, alright, we can actually do it where we just catch the lining and not the outside layer. And we'll catch the very top of this Hong Kong finish, the edge of the hem here. Alright, so I'm just catching the lining and the top of that Hong Kong and pull that like so. And there's our first stitch. Now let's pull that thread over again. Let's move down about 1/2 inch. And we'll do the same thing where we catch the lining and just the top of our hem and pull again. Okay, you can kind of see how it's locking or winding around itself. Let's move down another 1/2 inch. And we're just catching the lining and the top of our hem. And we'll keep doing this. Now you'll see there's no stitches on this side. Okay, you won't see them because all I'm doing is I'm just catching the top of this hem and my lining. Alright, and this gives you a nice clean front or outside of your garment where you don't see any stitching and it's nice and clean. Alright, and you'll notice that I'm working from right to left, meaning my needle's coming in from the right and going out through the left, like so. And I'm working towards myself, so I'm stitching down towards myself. It's very important to remember to pull that thread out of the way after every stitch, or you won't get that kind of wrap around. So notice as I stitch, I'm pulling my thread over into my other thumb or my other hand that doesn't have the needle and lock it in place. Again, this is the blanket stitch. Okay, last stitch, here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and right where I took that last stitch, I'm going to take another stitch, create a loop, go through that loop twice, and pull. There we go. Okay. So there it is, totally stitched up by hand. Alright, so that's the wrong side of it. There's my Hong Kong finish, there's my blanket stitch, that's the lining. And so the fashion fabric and the lining have both been caught into that Hong Kong finish. And if I flip it over, you can see all my stitches only went through the lining, they didn't go through to the fashion fabric. So I have a nice clean front edge here where you can't see any stitches. Okay, so there you go. That's how to Hong Kong your hem and tack it up. All right, everyone, good luck with that.